Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. DB333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, the New Order as Brazil. Now, last time we were here together, we got our nose a little bloodied by New Granada, but we're picking ourselves back up, and hopefully we'll be able to make our way and work our way past it. In the meanwhile, we're working on expanding out our oil industry. And next up, what are we going to do even? Maybe do some educational stuff. Would be nice. I forget right now where we need more help in Amazonas or the Northeast. Probably the Northeast, election-wise. Yeah, we're doing pretty okay in that area. But Northeast, we could use some extra seats and help. But before we continue on, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the beautiful places in Brazil. And we're going to be going south up now. You can check out the region starting with Rio Grande do Sul, Porto Alegre, the joyful harbor, nestled on the east bank of the Guaiba River, subsidiary waterway of Lagos dos Patos, large lagoon in South America. Since its founding in 1769, the city's economy has hummed to the tune of transient ships and laboring dock workers, who together comprise the salient cause for its prosperity. As a focus for the opening maneuvers of the Farrapos War, Porto Alegre is the birthplace of the myth of the gaucho, wily and insubordinate horsemen of the Southern Cone who are nonetheless skillful and daring, feature heavily in Southern American literary canon. For nearly 200 years, the clamor of Porto Alegre's docks have rung through South America. What new chimes will the joyful harbor compose? We'll find out, won't we? Maybe atomic ones. Next up, not here, Santa Catarina, Florianopolis. During the age of sail, ships required frequent stops to replenish their drinking water. Except for this reason, very little else Portuguese sailors settled in Villa da Santa Catarina. This outpost was originally named Destero, literally meaning exile, and even as mainland Santa Catarina became populated over the course of the 19th century, its isolated capital remained small and undeveloped. It wasn't until 1927 that a bridge connecting Florianopolis to mainland Santa Catarina opened, but it took just a few decades for it to develop into a sizable and wealthy city. Oh yeah, look at that. I guess it's... Today, Florianopolis is a principal cultural center for the whole southern region. Its museums, beaches, and prestigious universities attract students, artists, retirees, and most recently tourists from across the country. There are next up Parana. Curitiba began as a market town through which Parana ranchers would export their products to the coast. But as the Brazilian government sought to encourage European immigration to the undersettled interior in the mid to late 19th century, transformed into a industrial powerhouse and melting pot of peoples. German and Polish communities infused their cultures with that of locals, joined in the 1910s by Japanese immigrants as well. Today, Curitiba is one of the largest and wealthiest of all Brazilian cities, but as the world is torn asunder by the Cold War, increasingly is a city divided against itself. Japanese Curitibans face frequent harassment, while German factories field paranoid conspiracy theories alleging Nazi plots against Brazil. Curitabans of all backgrounds grow more suspicious of their neighbors by the day. Well, sucks to suck, I guess. I don't know what to say to that. Let's get going. Rafael Correa wanted to go home. Patrol after patrol, nothing ever happened. Nobody was up at this time anyway, except him. And night after night, he thought he couldn't live like this. He was staying up too late. He was never getting enough sleep, and he wasn't cut out for this. But then he remembered he was in a favorable position, better pay than one who was doing the same for the office of Phillips Petroleum or Yasuda. After all, few people got to guard the Palacio do Planalto. He didn't really know what his relative who got him the job in the first place. It was some PSP deputy, but they were family, and family looked out for one another. So now he was in what many would call a prestigious position, but to him it felt like the same thing all over again. It was the same window, the same offices, no different than if he was looking at one for a receptionist, one for a foreign engineer, one for middle of manager, or one for the president of Brazil itself. Raphael's hand went to his gun, and he almost thought about jumping in before his senses kicked in. Now he burst through the doors, running up the steps, flashlighting in one hand and revolver in the other. Within a few moments, he was out of the office, opening it up and clearing the room with a beam of light and the barrel of a gun. Nothing. Fuck. He thought he saw someone down there, someone or something in the office next to that cabinet right there. But there was no one. Nobody. The president was gone long ago, and he was the only guy in the building. Heart still pumping, he realized he needed to go back down and make sure the building was still secure, reminding himself that he still had a job and could get paranoid like this. He did not notice the office window, slightly open to the dark night. Ooh. Ominous. What do we want to do next? Can't do anything industry-wise. We could start on this, maybe? Yeah, let's do that. Hope y'all are doing well out there today. As he flipped through the report before him, Golbery de Cota Silva frowned. Contacts within Bolivian security services had procured detailed documentation of newly planned economic reforms. Rubber profits were said to be redistributed. Foreign investment would be subject to far greater scrutiny, with American, Brazilian, and Argentine firms in particular to be closely monitored. Fredo, you bastard. There could be no denying it. Ovando had gone back on his heel. Golbery shut his eyes and pondered. Half his agents were in Bolivia on business. He couldn't afford for them to be compromised. But if he withdrew them, then the SNI couldn't continue to monitor MNR activity efficiently. And that was without even considering the implications of Ovando giving himself the power to cut off oil shipments to Brazil at the snap of his fingers. At a baser level, Bolivia's president believed himself secure enough that he could flagrantly betray Brasilia. What was to stop him from turning towards Buenos Aires? Perhaps the alliance could be saved if only Golbery could remind Ovando of his place. Direct confrontation was out of his question. He may as well just hand over less of SNI men working for Bolivian government ministries. Economic pressures was just as unfeasible. It would jeopardize vital business relations. Perhaps a meeting between Bolivian and Brazilian presidents. No, that would only legitimize Ovando's reforms. There was nothing. Reluctantly, Golbery picked up the phone. Perhaps his friends in La Plata could do more for him than obtain a few documents. General Miranda. Pleasure to speak with you again. Well done, said the old man. 3 more claps before his hands fell back to his cane. I almost forgotten how strong you were. It's a shame that I had to be reminded like this. Sumitao looked back to Chiyoko. Let's go. For a moment, Chiyoko was paralyzed, staring at her father, surrounded by broken bodies, clutching at their wounds and groaning. Chiyoko! Chiyoko rushed Sumitao aside and the two left. As they rounded the corner, the old man's voice called back to him. Farewell, Butcher of Tupa. We'll be here when you come back to us. Chiyoko never forgot that nickname, and she never brought it up. As they left, she saw in her father's eyes a great pain. She saw that pain again when he suddenly turned around in the middle of their journey back home as he leaned in and held Chiyoko by her shoulder. I'll tell you everything, one day. I'll tell you everything I went through with them. Every mistake I ever made. But I beg you, never return to them again. They never talked about it again. She never went back to the SVA or the Kadosha. When they returned home, they listlessly moved through the front door. Chiyoko trudged up to her room, and Sumitada shuffled over to the living room, slumping on the chair with a defeated thud. When he saw his father, beaten and tired, Hiroshige looked up from his lap, his fingers finished twisting in the nervous energy. Dad, is Chiyoko back? What happened? It's all right, son, he said, his eyes focused on nothing. It's all right now. Let's go ahead. Some more industrialization. Let's take a look at the testing range. Deal within the rainforest, soldiers plan to split the atom. Utilizing funds from the Atoms for Peace program, the Brazilian armed forces are constructing a base to develop nuclear weapons and obtain victory in the South American Cold War. Let's go ahead. Max this out. We'll get there in about 2.6 years. And let's go ahead and select our next focus. I've had time to figure out what to do. It's been a couple days since I recorded. And yet I don't quite know. Ooh. only have this, so let's go ahead and do this. Technocratic approaches. As time passes, so does flow of information. Only with the passage of time, the flow becomes more precise and faster. Thus, new data always come that can either refute or reform notions. Looking for Adhemar's economic and serve second situation has come true. For after deep analysis, new data has come to the desk of the economic minister, such data proving both oil extraction and profitability are slowly yet steadily improving after the first phase of his plan. This is indeed a great victory for Benedito and proof that he was right with his approach. Now Brazil can start to reap the benefits of the glorious reforms brought to the Adhemar administration. Will she look at that? Yet another coup to add to the list. Well, tensions have cooled after that, interestingly enough. It's still tense, but they've cooled down. Kishimoto has been irreplaceable in maintaining the public opinion in Sao Paulo. Adhemar paced spoke, as has the corresponding support for the Kadosha. They are entrenched connections and votes for us. We cannot afford to waste them. Within one of the many private offices of Palacio, President Adhemar convinced Shugo Kishimoto, Lado Natel, and Getulio Vargas Jr. to touch bases on public strategy in the city, especially concerning Vargas. What I'm primarily concerned of, Vargas Jr. finally spoke up, is whether Japanese will even accept me in the first place. I'm no fool to what they've said about my father, and I have no doubts that they will likely share a similar reaction for me. Adhemar sighed, gesturing for Vargas to stand. Both men walked to a nearby window, which were neatly kept yards of neatly kept yards of grass. There we go. Gave way to outcrops of forestry nearby housing. Tell me, what have I accomplished here? Vargas paused, uncertain of such a rhetorical question. I'll tell you. Manager went over a group of near-militant Japanese ethnics about roughly the same time I've won over the communists, the very same group who supported excluding the Japanese in the first place. He patted Vargas' shoulder, shooting up a smile. If I can do that, then what can't the son of Vargas Senior do? Vargas can only silently nod this. I understand. I'll ensure that Kishimoto advises me carefully going forward. He turned to see Kishimoto still sitting. A curt nod was given. When overtures to the Nikkei are needed. Good man. The meeting continued for the better half of the afternoon, yet a crucial objective had been achieved. Kishimoto would see that the Kadosha and the PSP remained intertwined so long after Adhemar's eventual retirement from the presidency. Strategizing long term, perhaps lifting the Japanese immigration ban may be in the cards in the future. Interesting indeed. Brazilian I cannot speak right now. What is going on? The Brazilian embassy had been in shambles since the march on La Paz. Though the coup was over in 2 hours, the subsequent unrest had forced him into lockdown. Ambassador Mario de Pimentel Brandão and his staff scrambled to adapt to the new order in Brasilia, passing hundreds of sensitive documents to Brazilians, shredding their own copies, reviewing security protocols, identifying potential liaisons within the new regime, ensuring what few Brazilian tourists were present were promptly extracted, and reviewing security protocols again. Not even 24 hours after he took power, President Miranda marched into the embassy, which had only been informed of the visit an hour in advance. General carried himself proudly, his ill-fitting suit betraying the irregularity of his rise to power. President Ambassador shook hands. Brandão tried not to stare at Miranda's enormous nose. Your Excellency, it's an honor to meet you. Let me take you someplace better to talk. The ambassador led the president to a soundproofed conference room. No time for pleasantries, he asked. What's the situation on the streets? Improving. The thugs scatter the moment they see tear gas. Batons take care of the rest. Your Excellency, I must urge restraint. Fear has its place, I suppose, but Ovando must not become a martyr. For the people to believe in your presidency, you must give them something Ovando couldn't. And what he suggests, dole out the army's money to terrorists and beg them to reconsider. That was Ovando's game. There will be elections after the streets are safe. This is why I wanted to capture him. Get him on the radio, get his endorsement. A bomb in the helicopter? Did you think I was too stupid to do anything more complicated? Pimentel Brandau's brow shot upward with confusion. What do you... He reconsidered his words more carefully. You can't speak of such things. The ambassador only wished he knew what those things were. I will ensure your administration has access to all the intel we gather on the terrorists. Brandel went to sleep that night, unsure who ruled in La Plata. You've got to be shitting me on these reports, the handler said in fluent Portuguese, slipping through image after image of Nazi businessmen and diplomats cozying up to Brazilian counterparts. In a matter of just a year, Brazil had gone from a reliable oil-fed ally to whatever the hell this was. Special agent sat stoically across from him in the Rio Cafe, leaning back with his arm around the metal backrest. The two had been regulars for over a decade now, the owner content to polish glasses behind the counter filled with pastries. And why exactly would I be lying to you? Ever since the little highway crisis, Brazil's gone off the deep end. All of his projections about how we could sway Adhemar were blatantly wrong. The man is committed to his vision. He's not budged on it an inch. I tried warning you and the rest of the division months ago, but I guess the messages never got up the chain. Ignoring the insubordinate comment, the handler sighed, folding the middle shoulder shut. No point in dredging up the past. We need to focus on dragging this Mueller feller down. He's clearly the Met crowd's main power broker here. I'll make a few calls to Washington and see if we can't get a few more eyes and ears down here. The other tossed a stack of Cruzeros to the cover the two finished coffees on the table. Our time's up here. Two men pushed their chairs in. I want daily reports, now, not weekly. I'll be in touch soon about our next steps, the handler said, wiping sweat off his palms despite the cool morning weather. As the two men began to head their separate ways, he grabbed the special agent's shoulders and leaned in to whisper. We cannot lose Brazil to the Nazis. Do what you need to do. A new report lay neatly on Adhemar de Barros' desk, on Brazil's nuclear development and future capabilities. He opened the report and read further. We've developed a 4-megaton nuclear device on par with superpowers. The report was skimmed through the science evading the president. Final preparations underway for testing Para, for only Brazil will know for now. If this device were to detonate in Buenos Aires, casualties are predicted to reach 2 million. It made him giddy. Easing previous anxieties with the promise of a legacy. Radioactive fallout will kill at least 15% of survivors. Resulting dehydration and starvation will have a similar impact. It wasn't like they would ever use this weapon. It was just a deterrent. Uruguay will be subject to fallout. This is a necessary sacrifice. God was on their side. Brazil will win. Direct hit will leave the target uninhabitable for 100 years. Prometheus gave fire to Earth, and Adhemar gave fire to Brazil. Is that... We're almost there. How's our budget doing? Not great. Let's do a tax cut. Let's get that growth going up. Oh, look at that. And this keeps expanding out, doesn't it? Let's start manufacturing... Honestly, I'm kind of more interested in checking out some of these other ones. Let's do No Child Left Behind. While increasing the quantity of students throughout ease of educational access is paramount to our program, the quality of our young students is also crucial in our program's success. One can hardly expect a malnourished student to excel at his studies when he's far too busy worrying about his next meal. Expect a disabled student to even keep up when they are neglected and ignored by public institutions. Therefore, we must ensure that everyone gets a free, adequate meal at school so that poor citizens will not be disadvantaged in their pursuits. Furthermore, we shall arrange special classes for the disabled, with teachers specializing to accommodate their needs with absolute care and inclusivity. That's just nice. And New Granada's getting beat back a little bit. What's going on in the rest of the world? Oh, as I was saying that. So it's between the Patriotic Army and the other guys. Come in, Vasco. Takuna walked into the president's office slowly, his stern gaze avoiding any perception of contact with his commander-in-chief. A single crinkled sheet in his paper in his hand told the rest of the story. Ovando dead, Miranda alive and cooing, Bolivia burning. The mining war seemed easier to manage. Years of efforts, mediation, funding, and fighting. All down the fucking drain. On the other side of the table, the president still looked smug as ever, like he was the one who had hoodwinked everyone else at the poker table. So enraging, he thought. Language. That is not how to respect this office and the service it carries out, my friend. Adhemar smirked, aware of how the appeal to professionalism annoyed him. In any case, there was nothing we could do about Ovando. We extended our hand and he failed. It's not like we could or can go to La Paz and gun down the protesters. Nothing we could do? But we did so much for Ovando. You did so much. You let him loose with all those damn reforms. Just chuckling it up here. Oh, just wait until tomorrow to sit down after this, after you've seen the headlines yourselves. He marched off, a sheet of paper still lay on the table. No, he's right after all. The Bolivia debacle is not going to pass over like a bad hangover. Yes, the papers will be frustrating, but suddenly his finances in the country were about to be flashed to the world. It was a black mark for his administration, but worst of all, the stand on his money. So it is possible to steal and do too much. Oh, shall we lose 2 million? Damn. Still have a middling legacy. In the shadows of a German embassy, Robert Kirk paced back and forth furiously. He'd been under the impression that Adhemar had been the type he and the rest of Germany cooperated with reliably and consistently, but events the last few days had taught him anything was that sometimes a stick was just as necessary as a carrot. It all started a few days ago when he received a phone call from Berlin. He'd been requested to help Brazil's German minority gain the rights to organize independently. After all, Gomez could grant it to the other minorities, it only made sense for Germans to have it too. A highly reasonable request, frankly. He even had a highly appealing carrot ready, a highly lucrative pharmaceutical contract that his father had already gotten approved. And yet, when he illustrated the many benefits of his idea to Adhemar face to face, he had rejected it. Of course, he never said this directly. Kirk vividly remembered the vacant, glazed-over look the man had on his face as he sipped his coffee, calling a decent idea conceptually before proposing that they teach German as a second language instead of allowing full autonomy. The very idea of erring children only knowing their mother tongue as a secondary language alone made Kirk sick, but the nerve of him to reject them wholesale left him outraged. A man entered Kirk's office. He turned around, face visibly creased with irritation. What took you so long? Before the man continued, he continued. Never mind. I have a job for you, and every other man here, as a matter of fact. He then walked over to the filing cabinet, producing a sheet of paper with a list of names in Adhemar's cabinet. The carrot failed, now came the sick. I want any dirt you can find on any of these men brought to my desk as soon as possible. Now the problem of Cruel. Since its construction in 1679, the prefecture of French Guiana building had seen many uses, from a Jesuit convent to a government building to a place for the governors of French Guiana, to a seat of the brilliant military governor, and now to a civil service office for the Brazilian government. From here, they would slowly observe his homeland as to theirs, until the difference between Guianese and Brazilian was no more than a distinction to be remembered only in history books. Guiana would never be free. The flames of freedom had been extinguished forever. Those administrators in their suits who ran the Brazilian flag up the flagpole signed the death warrant for a free Guiana. But just as Justin Cayete watched the flag flutter in the air and felt the despair of a homeland stifled, he remembered the building, the shifting shape, the shifting tide, the shifting purpose it had served. So, too, would he have to shift. He was now a citizen of Brazil with the right to vote and the right to organize. He might not dare to proclaim a free Guiana, but he could still act and protect the people of Guiana from those who would do them harm. Nolasco and Alves would still do their best to harm the people he loved. Now was not the time to be consumed by despair, but to shift just as the building had done. A purpose could be shifted to something else. He had to keep organizing. The world never stops turning. Academic base, research facilities. I don't know if there's anything too different between these two. I don't see anything. Liquid reserves, academic base. Let's go and supply children's textbooks. We need to update the old textbooks currently in use to keep our nation's peoples up to date with all the newest breakthroughs in science, humanities, and even politics. We need to make sure that the outdated textbooks are replaced immediately with newer ones, that they are free by the abolishment of scientific textbook tariffs, and most importantly, that great President Adhemar is portrayed favorably in each and every one of them. Oh. Well, that's interesting. Oh, speaking of Omsk, Second West Russian War update dropped a few days ago, and Omsk now has content with that. Oh, here we are. Gatuly Vargas was enjoying cigars as the sun began to set on his ranch in South Borja. The soft orange light on his patio had always had a calming effect on him, even into his later years. As the sun continued to sink into the horizon, Vargas thought about the current president. That opportunistic bastard had always been a wild card, something Vargas desperately wanted to control, but could never just strangle into submission, joining the Paulista revolt in 1932 only to wrap them out in the following years, appointed as the intervener of Sao Paulo, turning into both an Estado Novo and PSP stronghold. Now the state was the seat of power for his own son, yet Adhemar still pulled all the strings on the national level. Coughing heavily into his sleeve, he laboriously reached across the small desk for a pen and paper. Pulling out a cigar and taking a large breath, he began to write. The address at the top was to the President of the Republic. Adhemar, you've always been a great little bastard, but I must admit that only you can continue the grand reforms that I have begun. Another bout of coughing ensued. Shit. We never agreed on policy, but know that I have full confidence in your intellect and pragmatism to continue guiding Brazil down its rightful path. I can only have his confidence because you are in charge and not those come from the UDN. Never surrendered to him. He signed the letter before folding into an envelope, struggling to stand up from his rocking chair. Sure would have been nice to spend the night with one of his mistresses, but his chest was killing him. Perhaps it was better for him to retire early for the day. There's always tomorrow, the former president thought. The following morning, it had been announced the leader of Estado Novo passed peacefully in his sleep. His last message to the president was found resting gently in the palm of his right hand. Approximately 7:30 a.m., news came out of Sao Borja that rocked Brazil. With the announcement of the former President Gatuly Vargas' death, the state announced a period of national mourning for the man who defined modern Brazil. While former President Vargas is widely loved for his policies such as universal suffrage and the nationalization of key resources like oil, he's also highly controversial with his dictatorial attitude during what's known as the Guided Democracy era of Brazil, and an alleged connection to the attempt on Carlos Lacerda's life. It's not hyperbolic to make the observation that no matter where you fall in the political spectrum, Vargas and his policies have made a colossal impact on the Brazilian nation, with many unsure how to fill the void left behind in his wake. His reforms help strengthen Brazil, and we will make it stronger. There we go. Diego heaved a sigh of relief as he dropped the last box of textbooks off in room 308. Finishing the hall had been taking up most of his usually relaxing mornings. As he got his breath, he looked excitedly at the large mass of cardboard that now occupied the back half of his classroom. It seemed the government had actually lived up to its promise and was giving schools the resources they desperately needed. He dusted himself off and rose. Time to unpack. Cutting into the nearest box, he saw gloss textbooks titled Physics Fundamentals, lying in neat rows at the top. Diego took one out and began flipping through out of curiosity, taking time to appreciate the cracking of his spine as he opened the book. Vivid diagrams and creative experiment ideas covered the pages, far from the monochrome on the old text. Although he couldn't comprehend the winding formulae that filled in the space between the images, he smiled, imagining how the physics department would react when they arrived. Diego returned the physics book and cut open a box containing his own subject. A row of complete history of Brazil. First edition lay inside. Grabbing one, he grinned more as he turned the pages through the book, appreciating the historical images and the woefully needed footnotes about early history. Turning to contemporary chapters, however, he began to grimace. Stories of heroic police rebels fighting against the Vargas Empire, the appointment of Adhemar as the climax of a constitutional revolt, seemingly endless paragraphs praising the virtues of the president and utterly curdled any sense of excitement that Diego had felt. With another sigh, the history teacher threw the textbook into the trash along with the rest of the hagiographic material. My thanks, Mr. President, but I would rather teach the truth. Almost true. There we are. Let's renovate some old schools. While we are building countless new schools, we mustn't get ahead of ourselves and forget about the schools that are already standing. These schools are hot, they're crowded, some of them don't even have proper sanitation. These conditions are appalling and simply unacceptable. We must send appraisers immediately to calculate the cost of renovation and flag the schools that need them the most. Out with the old and in with the new and renewed. Now that's what I like. What do we have over here? We could fund some overtime. How are these programs coming along? We're nearly done with the highway. That's going to be done in 3 months. 2.5 years. Let's pay for some overtime there. Formation of Comintern. Look at that. Would you look at that? Brigadier General, said Castillo, holding up a glass of beer. Title suits you. Suited you better, said Brigadier General Fernando Bethlehem, raising his glass up to his mouth. Down went half its contents. Christ, Castillo, what's this swill? Felt the atmosphere for Fernando, my home away from home. Bethlehem could not quite understand it. The bar was a dive off the main road. A shoebox fit into a hole in the side of a brick building. Barely fit 5 people and a bartender, but still liked the closeness. Like a warm blanket tucked in tight. Tell me you're not planning to live here. God, no. No, I'm going back home. I'm an old man. I'm tired of Amazonas. That's your problem now. Costello finished off his glass, tapped the tabletop to call for another round. He still didn't entirely know what to think of Bethlehem. A bit high-strung, overzealous at times, but undeniably better than any of the cockroaches that surrounded Lot. Part of Bethlehem reminded Costello of his younger self, and then grievances rose on the surface of his mind. He served valiantly, and yet he was condemned to exile in Amazonas. Lot's medley ensured that his career was spent stewing in bitterness, a war hero relegated to garrison duties. So desperately wanted other postings, the South African War passed him by precisely because he was stuck babysitting. That only a tragedy calmed him down in these final years. Recalling his face, Castillo grew quiet. He stared into the foamy cloud atop his glass. His mind drew her face into that blank canvas. Bethlehem could see in his friend's gaze that pain. His sight distracted him. He looked up and tapped on the tabletop. Break out the heavy stuff, barkeep. Adhemar stared longingly out of the window, his chin resting on his hand. The mob outside reduced his motorcade to a slow crawl, giving him plenty of time to plan a speech, and he needed to give at the end of his service. It was no secret that 2 citizens of the Republic that he and Vargas had never seen eye to eye. His thumbs constantly twiddled with the former leader's last words to him. Vargas said he'd always had full confidence in him. Adhemar wondered. If that was truly the case, and why hadn't he been nominated as Vargas' successor in 1950? And why did it take the cajoling and recruitment of his son to the BSP for them to even just normalize relations? There's no point in trying to dissect and understand the past. There were just too many factors involved back then. Adhemar's thought about gearing his speech to be more emotional towards Vargas. He did owe his political career to the man, regardless of how icy the relationship usually was. It certainly make Adhemar look good in the eyes of the Vargas coalition and the vast majority of the country. But was he really going to kiss the ass of the man that always seemed to have it out for him? Did Adhemar ascend to the presidency because of Vargas or in spite of the man? Adhemar folded the letter shut, tucking it neatly back into the envelope. He fidgeted with the seal, the words Orden mi progresso, staring back into the president's soul. Just what was he going to say? He was going to honor the legacy of Brazil's first builder. A thunderous clapping and resonated throughout Sao Borja. Adhemar de Barros stood up, shaking the hand of the previous speaker before laying out a sheet of paper on the podium. Adjusting the microphone, he looked across at the crowd gathered in front of Vargas's body. We must always strive to strengthen our glorious republic. There is no man in this country that has done more to advance Brazil throughout the years. The industrialization of our economy, the formation of a strong central government, constant vigilance against the communist and integralist forces. The integralist threats our country face on a daily basis, both internal and external. There was no man in this country that could have done the job Getulio Vargas did for each and every one of us. I promise I will faithfully uphold Vargasism into this new age. We may be without the man who started it all, but it will not have to end here. Brazil will continue to ascend in this new age into a strong country. A country that works for us all. A cheer began to break out throughout the crowd. Brazil's ascension has only been because of our mentor's ideas and policies. Our mentor, our dear friend Getulio Vargas, has set out a path for us all to follow. We will not forget our great leader. The cheers continued to grow in strength, and Adhemar felt his eyes begin to water. We cannot depart from this golden path. Brazil, we will march forward, together united under Senor Vargas's guidance. As he pumped his fist, the crowd erupted in a raucous frenzy with shouts of Adhemar and Vargas flooding the air. The president couldn't hold his tears back anymore, tears flowing freely down his jubilant face. Spawn boon to Adhemar's legacy, look at that. Still middling, though. Let's arrange a cabinet meeting. Just gotta keep things there. Well, it looks like New Granada's probably gonna win. Mario will ruin our administration, Filinto yelled into phone static. Listen to this. Workers are stuck in employment due to debt bondage, starved on a tight diet of watered-down pirao, and if supervisors were particularly moody, beaten with a whip or cane and locked in a cage for days on end. Adhemar, he's killing them. He treats his staff like enemies of his state. Wonderful news for Saturday morning. Adhemar didn't know how this obscure newspaper got his expose, but if mass media picks this up, it could spell disaster. He dropped the Tokyo pamphlet he was using to practice Japanese and turned to his idyllic view of Lago Paranoia. A gentle breeze swept through his room. Looking at his reflection in the glass, his jaw set, and he strengthened his back. It was Adhemar de Barros. He could handle this. We need to steer this discourse, crack down on the press. Filinto interjects, breaking into Adhemar's thoughts. Now would also be a good time for a bill to distract people. Something controversial, even. Suddenly, Kirk's agenda flashed through Adhemar's mind, granting German Brazilians the power to organize independently. He didn't hate the idea per se, and some quarters would sincerely support it. Nevertheless, this is definitely a contentious act. Would he be able to navigate the political fallout? Or he could just sack him. Corell had constantly been a costly liability. So much money would pass under the table to keep him in check, and yet he still managed to get the government to quagmires such as this one. And who knew what else he might have done behind the scenes, especially if someone is out there digging up dirt on members of his cabinet. Ousting a man that powerful might lead to trouble, but would it not be simply the right thing to do? No, Filinto. We're sacking him. Will there be reparations for the victims? Adhemar stood unwavering on the podium. These questions were easy. For once, he did everything by the book. He simply had to say what actually happened. Certainly, a reparations plan included immediate financial compensation, clearing out of all outstanding debts from exploitative bondage, as well as healthcare services to address the trauma experience. He really did those things. In light of Corell's abuses, can you assure that other members of your government are not engaged in similar worse activities? These questions are getting harder, but you may just need a lighter tone mass reflection. Rest assured, my friends, Corell's choices are his alone and do not reflect our values. Grain by grain, the chicken fills its crop, and we'll continue taking steps to ensure our actions align with the principles of justice and respect of our people. How will you manage the likely political fallout and loss of support from elements within the armed forces due to your dismissal of Corell, who had strong connections with military hardliners? asked a particularly plucky pundit. A pause long enough for journalists to relish. I want to stress, my friends, that the president of Brazil, strength of Brazil lies in the hearts of our people. Hearts. And the vibrancy of our democracy. No traitor, no matter how influential, should ever eclipse that. Then, with an unintended slip, he adds, as we look towards appointing a new defense minister, well, when we get to that point, we won't be swayed by threats or intimidation. Alright, that should convince them. Not a single person in Brazil was convinced. Well, that guy kind of sucks as a cabinet minister, so I'll be okay with getting rid of him. Let's promote some sports. While being the governor of the glorious state of Sao Paulo, Adhemar invested quite a remarkable amount of money into sports facilities for schools. Never forgetting where he started, he now seeks to do the same on a national level by providing funds for new basketball courts, new volleyball equipment, new football shoes, you name it. We shouldn't forget that all work and no play makes a dull and unhealthy person. It is known that sports and physical activity help you live longer, which perhaps may help us make some cuts in future healthcare spending. It was a few days ago. The whole country was practically already in the state of mourning, so it was only a matter of time. We only knew about this because of our connection to the security guard. Lacerda had barely registered what his secretary Esther was telling him. A million thoughts fled his mind. Tulio Vargas, his political enemy since practically the very beginning of the Republic, had passed away. Back in those tumultuous days in Sonata, when he'd cursed the man out in every way imaginable every single day, he'd imagine what it would be like when Vargas passed. Thank you, Esther. Thank you. If you could leave me for a bit, I have some feelings to ruminate on. She nodded curtly, exiting Lacerda's office. Feeling the grin creep up on his face, Hussein instinctively reached for the drawer underneath his desk. It contained a champagne bottle he'd been saving for this very occasion for a number of years now. Popping it open, he poured himself a glass, savoring the sweet taste of victory. He'd outlived the bastard. All those years of fighting the man's pseudo-dictatorship had paid off, with the PTB far away from the gates of power, as they should have been. But as Lacerda swilled the alcohol around his mouth, a thought had struck him. The BTB were gone, yes, but the PSB still had the presidency. Vargas was gone, but something much worse had taken his place. While he may have certainly been no saint, at least Vargas was no corrupt conman like Adhemar. He had some principles beyond mindless populism, principles he stuck to despite Lacerda's constant opposition. A funny feeling began to bloom in Lacerda's stomach, one wholly unfamiliar that he did not like one bit. The girl would not finish his champagne. After fruitlessly trying to finish sifting through his paperwork in front of him for a few minutes, he rang for Esther and told her and the staff that the champagne was on him. He left early, retreating to his home to reflect further what his new feeling towards Vargas could possibly be. And as he lay there in bed that night, he finally recognized what this void in the pit of his stomach was. It was lost. Damn, he didn't have the opportunity for his enemies to lovers arc to finally culminate. Feels bad. It started as these things do, with whispers and hushed tones, as if to say it any louder would invoke its presence. An old man who still possessed insurmountable martial strength in his wizened hands. Master of Judo took down 100 men in a brawl without breaking a sweat. The wrinkles may run deep, and the skin may be as hard as leather, but he moved like water, sliding across his foes and redirecting their energies around him. The story broke containment. Rumors reached beyond the Nikkei. Among the more bigoted of Sao Paulo, it had taken as proof positive the Japanese are a brutish and violent race. Among a section of that section are the Sao Paulo police, who considered setting up a task force to deal with this man. The task force went nowhere, an errant daydream. The police had greater problems than an old man who knew a bit of judo. The story reached higher levels. The rumor crossed the desk of Sugo Kishimoto regarded the whole thing as a joke, then as a nuisance. He knows what this is really about and decided he was better off keeping it as an urban legend. To those in the know, he reassured them it's all misunderstanding. Active minds and paranoid thoughts crossing over into loose talk. He knew better, and he knew it was better this way. The story made its way to its subject, Sumitada Taki, over the rumors at work. For a moment he was on edge, suspicious of a lingering stairs of whispers. Nobody suspected him, and he let it go the next day. The rumors dredged up old memories of what he had once felt on his hands, warm blood and cold iron. bones that broke and bars that held. He regretted, briefly, lapsing into old patterns. Then he returned home to his children, and he remembered that the man he feared was dead. With a little warning, he hugged them both, stating that he will always love them. The butcher of Tupa remained in his grave, and Sumitara-Taki no longer needed him. There we go. Well, we have another month, and we can start developing Amazona. I'll help up the industrialization rate there for now. Ooh. Interesting. Adhemar used all his skills as doctor to keep his blood pressure from bursting in his veins as his eyes stopped dancing over the trembling report in his hand. His ex-war minister, Armani Corella, gone AWOL, followed by God knows how many of his hardliner sycophants. How could this happen? Adhemar could swear to God he'd made sure Corella lost all influence after being promptly sacked. His instincts and experiences from 32 could tell this meant only one thing. A military revolt. Uh-oh. Not much later, Adhemar could already see from his window the army soldiers and tanks in readiness and forming a defensive perimeter of the Planalto Central, not a few miles further, around the entire capital, just as he had ordered Medici to do. But what if this was not enough? What if Corella managed to sway more men than he thought? What if Medici, a hardliner himself, ended up turning to Corella's side? Ooh. Oh boy. Adhemar's head was relentlessly pounded with these and 1,000 other questions. At nightfall, with the soldiers still standing by and no news about Corella's whereabouts, Adhemar picked up his cell phone. Nantel, can you hear me? Is anyone nearby? No? Good. Should already be aware of Corella's situation, right? The press must not hear a single word of this. It must be kept under complete secrecy from anyone outside the Planalto until the matter is resolved. And how the hell am I supposed to do this? Nantel replied. Simply asking me to not leak it will just give him more reason to do anyway. Adhemar turned silent with some display of reason. How? By not making them leak it. Give whatever bullshit or drama on the PSP you can find to call their attention. Globo, Folha de Sao Paulo, everyone. Just make sure not a single periodical has Corella on their headlines. Understood, Mr. President. Oh dear. So to get that shitty radio working or not, asked Marina impatiently, who had lost count of how many poker games he had played in the day while the cavalrymen continued to fight with the only functional radio on the military base. Why don't you try it yourself? You think it's so easy, replied the cavalryman. Hell, it's easier to find an Argentinian spy hiding in those bushes than getting a stable frequency in the end of this world. Before it went static, I heard some chatter about units going into radio silence for some reason, and troops near the capital being sent on high alert. Looks like something big is happening back in Brasilia. He stopped for a moment to reason his thoughts. A coup? If that's the case, then that fat Paulista's days are numbered. I don't doubt. Ooh. Spoke the infantryman. It's about time for the armed forces to shake up some things up. Though I doubt he'll succeed. The army's not the same from years ago. And that man is good with talks. He'll find a way out in one way or another. Well, I can't feel bad for him. That's what you get for being too friendly with the fucking Krauts, said the Marine, masking his glee as he pushed his coins, holding it straight on his other hand. But the Chamaria Grando's soul is too far from Brasilia. Better some action than spending the entire day with my ass stuck in a chair. Still, it's not like we're going to make any difference. It's up to our superiors to decide how this drama ends, not us. It's always been. Unless that man has some tricks up his sleeve. We can always have a nice talk to settle our disagreements. Before the infantryman continued, he reveals a full house on his hand, much to the Marine's shock. But if he's going to continue playing hard and betting his luck too high, as you did, then, well, it will not be for lack of wanting. What a note to leave things off on, huh, gang? well, I'm going to go ahead and leave things there, but thanks always for watching. Like if you liked, dislike if you didn't, leave any comments, feedback down in the comments section below. I read all the comments I get. I appreciate it. And if you pick my app for me, hit the sub button, hit the notification bell, keep update these uploads as they come out. Yeah, I'm going to leave things there as always. Thank you for watching, my friends. My name has been Mr. Dogbot333. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.